You already know the theme song. Don't even pretend you don't. Somewhere in the back of your brain, right now, a cab is stopping in front of a mansion, and a kid in a sideways hat is telling you his life got flipped, turned upside down. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looked like a simple, breezy sitcom about a fish out of water. And on the surface, it was. But underneath all that neon and laughter, there was a financial crisis, a casting war, a 20-year feud, and one of the most devastating episodes ever filmed for a family sitcom. Hi, my name is Aaron, and this is Old TV Cinema. Fact 1, the show was literally created to save Will Smith from prison. Nothing about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air should exist, and I mean that literally. By 1989, Will Smith was in serious trouble. Not celebrity trouble, not bad press trouble. Real, federal government is coming for you trouble. At the peak of his music career, with DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Will Smith had made a lot of money. And then he spent essentially all of it. Cars, jewelry, and entourage, a lifestyle that would make a Wall Street banker wince. And here's the part that gets genuinely alarming. He hadn't paid taxes on any of it. The IRS came knocking with a bill somewhere in the range of $2.8 million. They seized his assets, his furniture, his cars, his equipment. Almost everything he owned was repossessed. Will Smith, the guy who would go on to become one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, was essentially broke and facing potential criminal charges at the age of 20. Enter Quincy Jones. The legendary music producer happened to catch Will performing and saw something. He thought the kid had charisma that translated beyond music. He made a phone call to NBC, who were looking for a vehicle to anchor their Monday night lineup. And NBC, to their enormous credit or possibly just their enormous desperation, decided to build an entire television show around a 20-year-old rapper with no acting experience and a tax debt the size of a small country's GDP. The deal essentially meant NBC and the production were fronting Will money that would go towards settling his IRS situation. The show was his lifeline. If it flopped, he had nothing, which means every single episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was filmed under the shadow of a young man who desperately, urgently needed this to work. That context changes how you watch it, doesn't it? Fact 2, the theme song was almost completely different. You have to understand how strange it was in 1990 to open a primetime network sitcom with a full rap song. This was not a normal thing. Sitcom theme songs in that era were light, melodic, and inoffensive. Think Growing Pains, think Family Ties, think Cheers, warm, welcoming, completely forgettable. Will Smith wanted a rap, and the network was not thrilled. NBC executives were nervous about alienating Middle America. Rap music in 1990 still made a significant portion of the television industry deeply uncomfortable, and putting it front and center as the first thing a mainstream primetime audience would hear was considered a real risk. Will pushed back, hard. His argument was simple. The character is a rapper from West Philadelphia. If the theme song sounds like every other sitcom on television, the whole premise falls apart in the first 30 seconds. He won the argument, but with a compromise. The original version of the theme song was significantly longer and more detailed. What you know and have it stuck in your head for 30 years is actually an edited, shortened version of the full track. The full version has additional verses that flesh out the backstory even further, including more detail about the fight that got Will sent to Bel-Air in the first place. It's worth finding if you've never heard it. It's strange and wonderful, and sounds exactly like something a 20-year-old with everything to prove would record. Fact 3. Will Smith had zero acting experience, and it showed. This one is not exactly a secret, but the degree to which it affected early production is something most casual fans don't fully appreciate. Will Smith had never acted before. Not in anything. Not in a school play. Not in a commercial. Not in a music video. With a loose narrative structure. Nothing. He was handed scripts and pointed at cameras and expected to hold his own against trained actors, some of whom had been working in television for decades. The early episodes are noticeably rough if you go back and watch them. His line delivery is occasionally stiff. He glances at the camera at moments when he shouldn't. There are scenes where you can almost see him thinking about his next line instead of listening to the person talking to him. Directors developed specific techniques to work around it, including letting Will improvise more than the script called for, because his natural personality was always more fluid than his scripted performance. Here is the interesting thing though. James Avery, who played Uncle Phil, and Joseph Marcel, who played the butler Jeffrey, were formally trained stage actors. Both of them essentially mentored Will on set during those early seasons, coaching him through scenes, running lines with him between takes, and modeling what it looked like to actually inhabit a character rather than perform one. By season 2, the improvement was visible. By season 3, he was genuinely good. By season 5, he was carrying episodes on his back. That arc, from nervous kid to legitimate leading man, happened entirely on camera, one episode at a time, in front of millions of people. That is either terrifying or inspiring, depending on your perspective, possibly both. Fact 4. James Avery was a Vietnam War poet before acting. I need you to pause for a second and really sit with this one. Before James Avery was Uncle Phil, the booming, blazer-wearing patriarch sitting in that enormous chair in the Bel-Air mansion, he was a United States Navy veteran who served during the Vietnam War. And during and after his service, he processed the experience by writing poetry. Not casually, seriously. He published work. He engaged with the literary community. He was, by any honest definition, a poet. He came to acting relatively late, studying theater at the University of California, San Diego, after his service. He worked steadily through the 1970s and 80s doing voice work, including roles in animated series and building a resume of character parts. He was in his early 40s when Fresh Prince launched. What this background gave him was something you genuinely cannot manufacture. James Avery understood weight. He understood what it meant to carry something heavy and still show up and still function and still love the people around you. Uncle Phil could have been a cartoon, a stuffy rich man played purely for laughs. In Avery's hands, he became something real. When he was angry, it felt earned. When he was tender, it landed like a punch. He passed away in December of 2013. He was 68 years old. There was an enormous outpouring from everyone who had ever worked with or been touched by the show. And it was genuine, on a set where a lot of things were complicated. By all accounts, James Avery was not one of them. Fact 5. Alfonso Ribeiro hated Carlton for years. The Carlton dance is one of the most recognizable pieces of physical comedy in the history of American television. Alfonso Ribeiro throwing his arms wide and bouncing to Tom Jones's "It's Not Unusual" is the kind of thing that gets seared into your memory permanently after approximately one viewing. It is objectively delightful, and for a long time, Alfonso Ribeiro kind of resented it. Carlton Banks was written as the embodiment of everything Will was supposed to reject about Bel-Air. He was preppy, uptight, deeply uncool, and completely disconnected from the culture Will came from. The joke repeatedly was Carlton. His clothes were the joke. His music taste was the joke. His worldview was the joke. Will got to be cool and funny and the audience surrogate. Carlton got to be the punchline. Ribeiro has spoken in interviews about how difficult it was after the show ended to get cast in anything that wasn't leaning directly into the Carlton image. Producers wanted Carlton. Casting directors wanted Carlton. The character had become so dominant in the public consciousness that the actual actor behind him struggled to be seen as anything else for years. He's made peace with it since. He's talked about coming to appreciate what Carlton meant to people and what the character represented. There is actually a genuine reclamation of Carlton in recent years, a recognition that the show was sometimes punching at Carlton from a place that deserved more examination. A kid who was comfortable in his own skin, getting relentlessly mocked for not being black enough. That is a complicated thing to play for laughs every week. Ribeiro eventually won Dancing with the Stars, which, given the whole Carlton situation, is either a perfect ending or the universe's most elaborate joke. Fact 6. Janet Hubert was fired and replaced mid-series and it got ugly. This is the one that casts the longest shadow. Janet Hubert played Vivian Banks, Aunt Viv, for the first 3 seasons of Fresh Prince. She was extraordinary in the role. Sharp, warm, authoritative, funny. She had a dancing background, a theater background, genuine presence. She was, by any reasonable measure, one of the best things about the show. After season 3, she was gone, replaced by Daphne Maxwell Reid, who played the character for the remaining 3 seasons. The official story from the production was that Hubert was difficult, that she had clashed with cast and crew, that her contract situation had become untenable. Will Smith, in at least one interview at the time, made comments that were not kind. He suggested she was the problem. He used the phrase, quote, "She went from being a diva to being a straight-up B-word." That was said publicly. In an interview about a colleague, Janet Hubert's version is substantially different. She has said that she was pregnant during season 3, that her contract was being renegotiated in bad faith, and that Will Smith used his enormous influence as the star and a producer to have her removed. She spent years publicly fighting that narrative. It became one of the defining stories of her career, overshadowing everything else she did. For over 2 decades, they did not speak. And then came the reunion special in 2020, which we will get to in a few minutes, because what happened in that room is genuinely something. Fact 7. The show almost didn't film the dad episode. If you watched Fresh Prince as a kid, you remember this episode even if you don't remember the title. Papa's got a brand new excuse. Season 4, episode 24. Will's father, Lou, who abandoned him as a child, comes back into his life. They reconnect, Will gets excited, he starts making plans, and then Lou bails again, and Will Smith delivers a speech to Uncle Phil that is one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the history of the sitcom format. Not drama, sitcom. The man stands in the middle of a family comedy set and falls apart completely, and it is almost unbearable to watch. What many people don't know is that the episode almost didn't happen. The writers had been pushing for a storyline about Will's absent father for a long time. The network had reservations. This was a family sitcom, light comedy. They were nervous about going somewhere that dark, that unresolved. Sitcoms are supposed to wrap things up. The dad episode does not wrap things up. The dad leaves again, and nothing is fixed, and Will asks Uncle Phil why his father doesn't want him, and the audience laughs because that is what a laugh track does. It fills the silence, and the silence in that scene is profound. James Avery's response, the way Uncle Phil simply opens his arms and holds Will, reportedly was not in the script. Avery improvised it, and Will Smith's tears in that scene are real. He has said in multiple interviews that he was not acting by the end of that episode. He was crying about his own life. They kept every single take. Fact 8. DJ Jazzy. Jeff was written into the show as a running joke on purpose. DJ Jazzy Jeff, Will's real-life musical partner, appeared in Fresh Prince as Jazz, Will's best friend from Philadelphia, who keeps showing up at the Banks mansion. And in almost every appearance, he gets thrown out of the house. Sometimes by Uncle Phil personally, sometimes by circumstance. But the bit is consistent. Jazz arrives, Jazz gets ejected. Here is the thing. That was the entire design. The writers conceived Jazz specifically as a character whose function was to be removed from the premises. The joke was always the exit, not the entrance. They built a recurring character entirely around a pratfall. What makes this genuinely weird is that DJ Jazzy Jeff, the real human being, kept showing up to be thrown out of a fake house on camera for 6 years. And he did it enthusiastically. He has spoken about how much he loved being on the show, despite the character having essentially no arc, no development, and no purpose beyond the physical comedy of his departure. There are episodes where you can see Will Smith trying not to laugh during the throwing out scenes. The whole bit became a fan institution. When Jazz doesn't get thrown out of an episode, something feels cosmically wrong. It is a deeply strange piece of television craft, and it works perfectly every single time. Fact is, 9. The show tackled topics. No other family sitcom would touch Fresh Prince aired on NBC between Full House, Family Matters, and a rotation of other shows where the highest dramatic stakes were usually a misunderstanding that got resolved before the credits. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Fresh Prince was doing episodes about gun violence and racial profiling and colorism and drug addiction. The episode where Will and Carlton get pulled over by police and detained is one of the most uncomfortable half hours of comedy television ever produced, and it was made in 1992. Will has just bought a car. They get stopped. The officer is hostile and dismissive and assumes the worst. Carlton, who has lived in Bel-Air his entire life and has no framework for this experience, is genuinely shocked. Will is not shocked. He has been here before. The episode doesn't resolve cleanly. Nobody learns a tidy lesson. The injustice just happens, and then the show has to keep going. NBC pushed back on several episodes over the course of the series. The writers and producers, to their credit, pushed back harder. There is a direct line between the willingness of Fresh Prince to go to those places and the kind of storytelling that became more mainstream in family programming in subsequent decades. The show was ahead of where its network wanted it to be, and it went there anyway. Fact 10. Will Smith's real personality slowly took over the character. In the first season of Fresh Prince, Will Smith, the character, is a specific person. He's from West Philadelphia. He has a particular background and a particular set of references and a particular way of seeing the world. The writers had built him with some intention and specificity. By season 4, that specificity had mostly dissolved. The character had drifted into something that was essentially just Will Smith being Will Smith on a television set in front of a live studio audience. This is not necessarily a criticism. The real Will Smith is magnetic and funny and watchable. But it represents a genuine creative shift that happened gradually enough that most viewers never consciously noticed it. The writers stopped inventing things for the character and started writing toward the personality they observed every day on set. The character's Philadelphia identity, which was specific and important in the early episodes, became more of a background detail than a lived reality. It also meant that when the show ended, there was not a lot of distance between Will Smith the actor and Will Smith the character, which created its own set of challenges when he tried to do dramatic film work afterward. Early in his movie career, he kept getting asked why he was doing serious films when he was so funny. The show had worked almost too well at making him synonymous with one specific likable persona. He's talked about fighting against that perception for years. It is, in a very roundabout way, part of the reason he took the roles he took in the late 1990s. He was running from the ghost of a character who had gradually become indistinguishable from himself. Fact 11. The Banks Mansion is a real house and you can find it. The exterior shots of the Banks family home in Bel-Air, the enormous white mansion that opens every episode, are not a set. It is a real property located in Brentwood, California, on Elm Drive. The house was used for exterior shots throughout the entire run of the series. When the show became a hit, fans started showing up. This is understandable and also slightly chaotic, because the people who lived there were private residents who had not necessarily signed up to have tourists arriving at their gate on a Tuesday afternoon to take photographs and recite the theme song. The owner of the property at various points during the show's run dealt with fan traffic in a way that ranged from tolerant to significantly less tolerant, depending on the volume and behavior of the visitors. There are accounts of fans ringing the intercom. There are accounts of fans attempting to photograph themselves in ways that required them to be, shall we say, adjacent to the property line in a creative sense. The house has changed hands multiple times since the 90s. It sold in 2019 for approximately $7.8 million. The listing mentioned nothing about its television history, which feels like an oversight of historic proportions. If you go there today, people still show up. They always will. Some addresses just belong to everybody now, whether the deed says otherwise or not. Fact 12. Tatiana Ali was the most formally trained actor on the entire cast. While Will was learning to act in real time and the rest of the cast was figuring things out around him, Tatiana Ali, who played youngest daughter Ashley Banks, had been performing professionally since she was 6 years old. She had done Sesame Street, she had done commercials, she had stage experience. She had been in front of cameras for half of her life before she ever set foot on the Fresh Prince set. She was, by the time the show launched, a seasoned performer by any reasonable standard, despite being a child. What this meant in practice was that she was frequently more technically prepared than the adults around her. Directors noticed. Crew members noticed. She hit her marks. She knew how to find the camera without looking for it. She understood instinctively what it meant to be in a scene versus to perform a scene. She later went to Harvard University while the show was still in production, which tells you everything you need to know about Tatiana Ali's approach to managing her time and her priorities. The show was one thing on a long list of things she was doing and doing seriously. She has stayed active in television and in advocacy work since Fresh Prince ended. She is, in a just universe, considerably more famous than she is, but that is a conversation for a different video. Fact 13. The show made NBC's Friday night lineup relevant again. before Fresh Prince landed and before NBC figured out what to do with it, the network's Monday night situation was manageable but not dominant. More relevantly, their overall scheduling in the early 1990s was undergoing real turbulence. The Thursday night block, with Cosby and Cheers, and later Seinfeld and Friends, was the crown jewel. Other nights were inconsistent. Fresh Prince anchored in a Monday slot initially, and then moved around as the network tested its strength, demonstrated something important. There was an audience for this show that was not the same audience as Cosby or Cheers. Younger, more diverse, more urban in its cultural references. NBC had not been effectively programming for that audience. The show's success opened a conversation inside the network about what a 21st century version of NBC could look like. Not immediately, television doesn't move that fast. But Fresh Prince was part of a shift in awareness, proof that the network's audience was broader and more varied than their primetime lineup had been acknowledging. Several shows that came after it, including some that are now considered classics, benefited from the door Fresh Prince opened in terms of what NBC was willing to put on air and what audience they were willing to program for. The butterfly effect is harder to trace than it is with something like Married with Children and Fox, but it is real. Fact 14. The reunion special broke everyone, analysts including the audience. In 2020, HBO's Max produced an unscripted reunion special for the 30th anniversary of Fresh Prince. The cast came back, they told stories, they laughed, they got emotional. It was warm and nostalgic and everything a reunion special is supposed to be. And then Will Smith and Janet Hubert sat down across from each other for the first time in over 2 decades. What followed was one of the most genuinely raw moments that has ever aired in that format. Not performed raw, not celebrity crying on cue raw, actual raw. Hubert talked about what the years had cost her. She talked about what losing that job had meant for her career, her family, her sense of self. She talked about her son. She talked about hitting rock bottom. And Will Smith sat there and listened, and at several points was visibly struggling to hold himself together. He apologized. She talked about what an apology means and what it doesn't fix. It was not a neat reconciliation. It was 2 people in a room with 20 years of unresolved pain trying to figure out what to do with it on camera. The special aired during a year when the entire world was already emotionally flattened, and somehow it still hit harder than most things on television that year. People talked about it for weeks. Not because of the nostalgia, because of that room, because of those 2 people. That is not something you can script. And for a show that began its life in a writer's room with a tax problem and a rap song, ending up there is genuinely remarkable. Fact 15. The reboot changed everything and almost nothing. In 2022, Peacock launched Bel-Air, a dramatic reimagining of Fresh Prince as a serious prestige drama. Same premise. West Philadelphia kid moves in with wealthy relatives in Bel-Air. No laugh track, no neon wardrobe, no jazz getting thrown out of the house, dark cinematography, real stakes. It was based on a fan-made concept trailer that Will Smith himself saw and championed. He executive produced the reboot. He wanted it to exist. And here is the thing. It is actually good. It is a legitimately well-made dramatic series that takes the source material seriously and finds new angles in it. The actor Jabari Banks, who plays Will, carries the show with genuine presence. The dramatic weight that the original sometimes reached for and then backed away from because it was a comedy is front and center here. But it cannot escape the original. It will never escape the original. Every review, every piece of coverage, every conversation about Bel-Air comes back to the same place. The theme song, the Carlton dance, the dad episode, Uncle Phil in that chair. The original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air ran for 148 episodes between 1990 and 1996. It launched a global superstar. It changed what a family sitcom was allowed to say and who it was allowed to say it to. It gave us one of the most emotionally devastating scenes in the history of the format. And it did all of this while being, on the surface, a breezy comedy about a kid from Philly who took a cab to a mansion. That is a remarkable amount of weight for a theme song to carry. And somehow, it carries it every single time.